Well, it's always a pleasure to return to Boston. Exactly 21 years and 1 month ago, I was on a first date near here, specifically a big green building at 4 Yawkey Way. And the Red Sox were playing the Seattle Mariners that night. It wasn't nearly as exciting a game as we saw last night. The Sox were down 8-0 in the 8th inning. And Ellis Burks hit a solo home run for the Red Sox. So I turned to my date and I said, "Do you know about the tradition at Fenway Park?" And she said, "No, I don't know about the tradition here." And I said, "Whenever a Red Sox player hits a home run, couples have to kiss." And she said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah." So we had our first kiss there. And as you might have guessed, given how gullible she was, she eventually married me. But you didn't come here to hear about my love life. You came here to hear about what I learned from evaluating the District of Columbia Opportunity Scholarship Program over a 5-year period. But in a sense, I think in a very real sense, the DC OSP provided opportunities for highly disadvantaged children in our nation's capital that are similar to the opportunity that Fenway provided to me, a highly disadvantaged romantic, during that fateful game. So the OSP, it is a scholarship program, a school voucher program, a private school choice program. The whole point is to provide families with more educational options, including private schooling options for their children. It started as a pilot program in 2009. To be eligible, students had to be entering grades K through 12, to be residents of the District of Columbia, and to be low income, basically to qualify for the federal lunch program. They were provided with a scholarship worth up to $7,500 that they could take to a private school, any participating private school of their choosing. Over 60 private schools in the district participated. And the expectation was that the scholarship would be renewed for the 5-year pilot program of the initiative. And the program was oversubscribed. So these scholarships were awarded by lottery, with priority given to kids who were attending public schools in need of improvement, what we call SENI public schools, schools in need of improvement. The U.S. Department of Education commissioned a study of this program. It was actually congressionally mandated that it be studied. And my research team was selected to conduct that study because a lottery, random chance, determined who among the population who wanted to do this got the opportunity to actually take a scholarship to private schools. This gave us the opportunity to do a gold standard experimental evaluation of the program. The students who lost the lottery became the perfect control group to compare results for the scholarship students because they were similar to the scholarship students in all respects except they lost the lottery. And we were able to follow the first 2 cohorts of students for 5 years for cohort 1 and 4 years for cohort 2. Cohort 2 had the most participants in our study, so basically the outcomes that I present here are really dominated by the cohort 2, so they essentially are 4-year outcomes. First, let's look at the enrollments. Over time, this program had an interesting history. As you see at the beginning, we see what we might expect, and that is the program had over 1,000 students. That was the initial enrollment in the fall of 2004. It was supported by a $13 million annual appropriation, and so at the maximum scholarship amount that met the program could sustain about 1,700 students. But because not all the private schools were charging tuition at the $7,500 level or above, and because the program was over-enrolled the first year, there were funds that rolled over and they were able to support additional students the second, third, and fourth year. So you see that the program trended up to almost 2,000 students in the fall of 2007 and then started to decline in enrollments. Now the major decline in enrollments that took place in 2009 and 2010 was because Congress capped the program and prevented new students from entering the program, including 216 students who were told that they won the lottery in the fall of 2009 and then were told that they can't go to a private school because Congress had capped the program. And then you see in the fall of 2011, the program was reauthorized, reopened to new students, funded at a $20 million a year annual level, and as a result, immediately another 600 students joined the program. Now, what did these students look like? Basically, they were students of color. 90% of the students were African American, 9% Hispanic. Their average family income was $17,356 in 2004. So basically, even though the program was restricted to low-income students, the actual participants were on the lower end of low income, $17,000 a year family incomes. Only 6% of the students had mothers with a college degree, 17% had a diagnosed disability, and in their baseline test scores, they tested at the 33rd percentile. This is the average student in this program at the start. Tested at the 33rd percentile in reading and the 31st in math. Okay, so where did they go? Remember, the program provided an opportunity for students to take a scholarship to a private school. Not all of them took advantage of the opportunity, and not all of them remained in public schools for the full 4 years of our study. This is the schools that the students in our treatment and control group were enrolled in the final year of our study. We see 55% of the treatment students were in private schools using scholarships. 18% were in public charter schools, and about 27% were in traditional public schools. When we look at the control group, 11.5% of these students ended up going to private schools even though they lost the scholarship lottery. They've somehow found a way to finance private schooling. Over a third were in public charter schools. The public charter school sector was growing during the period of our evaluation, and 53% of them were in traditional public schools. Now, a lot of people look at this chart and they say, okay, tell me what happened to the 55% of the treatment group who went to private schools compared to the 53% of the control group that went to public schools, because they want to know the difference between private school and public schooling. The problem, there's a big problem with this comparison, and Nirav sort of alluded to this in his talk, and that is that the two bars in totality are similar, contain similar demographically situated students, the entire treatment group and the entire control group. But those subgroups within the bars are different, and they basically vary from bottom to top in terms of how motivated and how on the ball their families were. So basically, if we compared the treatment group who actually went to private schools, the outcomes for those kids, with the control group students who stayed in traditional public schools, we'd be comparing the most advantaged and on-the-ball members of the treatment group with the least advantaged and on-the-ball members of the control group. That would be a biased comparison. We won't do that. What we are able to do is take the difference between both groups, one group that's dominated by students who got access to private schools, and the second group that's at least dominated by students who remained in traditional public schools. Take the average difference in outcomes for those two groups, and then we can make a statistical adjustment, at least for the students in the treatment group who declined to use their scholarship. And those are the results that I'm going to present to you here. They're called the impact on the treated experimental estimates. Graduation rates. This was the eye-popping finding of our study. Basically, using the use of an opportunity scholarship through this program increased the likelihood of a student graduating from high school from 70% in the control group to 91%. That's a 21 percentile increase in graduation rate probability. And with the 3 stars there, that means we can be 99% confident that this was a true effect of the program and didn't happen by chance. When we look at test score effects, there's really nothing to see on the math side. Basically, the impacts of the program, there was no evidence that the program had any impact on math achievement. There was substantial evidence that it had some positive effect on reading achievement. And this is basically the effects plotted over time. The brackets around the boxes are what we call the confidence intervals, the 95% confidence intervals that we hold around those estimates of impact. And they're 95% confidence because that's the standard for the US Department of Education. You have to use 95% confidence. And you see that in the first 3 years of the program, there was a gradual increase in the impacts on reading on these students to the point of a 5 scale score point gain in the third year that was statistically significant because those brackets are above the 0 line. The final year of the study, we had a smaller sample. A lot of kids had graduated out. And we had sort of noisier estimates, and you see that the bracket dips right below the 0 line. That basically, we could only have 94% confidence that the program had a positive impact on reading that final year. Because of that, we had to put in our report that there's no conclusive evidence that the program affected student achievement. A lot of opponents very quickly dropped the conclusive modifier in that sentence and basically said our report demonstrated there's no evidence of achievement impacts from the program, but there's plenty of evidence. You can sort of see it splayed out here, at least highly suggestive evidence with 94% confidence that students were reading at somewhat higher levels as a result of the program. Now, we did see very clear evidence of positive reading gains for some subgroups of students in the program. These include the students who were not in CME schools before they enrolled in the program, that were in public schools that had not been rated in need of improvement. Higher performing students, students who were in the higher 2/3 of the testing distribution at the start of our study, and girls. And here we see effect sizes as Nirav presented in his presentation, and we convert those, like Credo did, we convert those to months of schooling, additional months of schooling, and we see that the students in these subgroups demonstrated gains of over 4 months of additional schooling over the 4-year period of our study, and we can be over 95% confident that those are true program effects. All right, there were additional program impacts. Parents were much more satisfied with their schools if they had an opportunity to choose private schools with a voucher. They viewed these schools as safer and more orderly learning environments for their children. So what does this all mean for Massachusetts? Well, when you establish an education marketplace that includes private schools, you basically have to look at supply and demand. And demand for private school choice is coming primarily from low-income minority families in cities. That's where demand is greatest, most likely because they tend to be stuck with the worst assigned public schools. So here I basically present the 6 largest metropolitan areas in Massachusetts, describe the size of their student population, because size matters, scale matters. It makes markets operate more efficiently when there's large scale. The percent of students who qualify for the federal lunch program, the percent African American, and the percent proficient in 8th grade math, because we've also found that parents usually don't switch their child out of a public school if the child is doing well. If it ain't broke, they don't try to fix it. It's when kids are not doing well in their current statement that there's demand for more school choice. So that's the demand side. The supply side is, I present in terms of the ratio of private to public schools in the cities, the number of private high schools, which are often a choke point for private education in urban areas, and evidence of slack supply in the existing private schools. Why do I focus on existing schools? It's because in the voucher programs I've studied so far, with the exception of Milwaukee, these programs have been small pilot programs that don't have a large enough number of scholarships offered to stimulate new supply of schools in these communities. So basically, the initial enrollments of students in school voucher programs are always in existing private schools and take advantage of slack supply. And basically, on these metrics, I rate the Boston and Springfield areas as very good fits for a private school choice program, the Worcester and Fall River areas as good fits, and the New Bedford and Lawrence areas as at least fair fits. Now, drawing lessons from the District of Columbia, I use the same caveat that Nirav did. I mean, every state's different, every city's somewhat different. This is just my professional judgment, having studied a number of these programs and seen what they can do for families. But it does make sense in a certain way for Massachusetts to look to the District of Columbia, because if they are to have a private school choice program, the federal government is going to have to fund it. And that's because Massachusetts, along with Michigan, has the most legally restrictive anti-religious aid provisions in their state constitution of all the states across the country. And so constitutionally and legally, it would be very difficult for Massachusetts itself to initiate a private school choice program, but they could very easily take advantage of the same thing that the District of Columbia did, and that is having the federal government sponsor something as a pilot program targeted to particular metro areas in the state. Thank you.